why America is the greatest country to ever exist, why our principles matter, and then why conservatives do things better than the left.
Is what the law would consider plunder. You're literally stealing something that somebody worked for and you're redistributing it to other people. And it's plunder, it's stealing.
You just need to stop the normalization of lying to voters too. When Zohran Mamdani runs in New York City for their mayoral race and promises all this free stuff, and then once he's actually elected, delivers nothing.
A lot of people, they feel their politics more than they think their politics. There are, very well-established DSA, Marxist groups at the University of Utah. The founders were not interested in setting up a government that was a perfect democracy. They were really concerned, more than anything, about how we protect individual rights.
Welcome out to God and Country. I'm Uriah Kennedy. We got Ingrid Betries right next to me, and we got a table full of guests this week coming down from the University of Utah mostly, right? Everybody, U of U?
Southern Utah University.
Yeah.
Southern Utah University.
Yeah. University of Utah.
University of Utah.
University of Utah. Go Utes.
Sadly, we don't have any BYU people this week.
Well, we have you.
We have me.
BYU person.
But to kind of give introductions to everybody, we've got Carson Cooper right here across from me. We've got Tanner Moss right here. Everybody should know Riley Beasley. He's been on here before. And then we've got Ben Priest down behind Ingrid there. We're going to be talking about socialism, probably get in a little bit about Sharia law today. There's major issues going on with our universities right now where socialism is becoming very, very popular among students. The rising generation always tends to think that's a solution for some reason, particularly when they get into financial hardships, can't afford housing, can't afford food. Times become tough. The sound of free stuff always becomes good. And then they don't understand things from there. So we'll let everybody kind of go through quick introductions, where they come from, what they're doing right now, then we're going to jump right into it. So again, like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you're helping us get out there on social media. We need all the help we can get past the YouTube suppression, TikTok suppression now. TikTok.
Big time.
Yeah.
I had to fight every single post on 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, TikTok's fun. Instagram's doing pretty okay, but the other one's not so much. But YouTube doesn't like conservative values. Google doesn't like conservative values, so obviously they're trying to suppress that all the time. Down below, get our t-shirts, support the channel, and we're going to jump right into it. So let's start here with Carson Cooper, and we'll go ourselves around, just kind of give an introduction to your public out there and let them know what you do, where you're doing it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Carson, born and raised in St. George. Going to the University of Utah now. I got 1 more year left. I've been studying quantitative economics there. And super involved in the College Republicans, so we've helped build the chapter there, and now I'm helping Riley a little bit more at the state level, I hope, and just trying to capture all the energy we can in this movement and guarantee a conservative future for our state.
Awesome. Tanner.
Yeah, so I'm a senior poli-sci major at Southern Utah University. I got introduced to the College Republicans and Riley just over the last few months doing primaries and stuff, and I'm going to be taking over the chapter down at Southern Utah University, trying to revamp that because
that's Price, right?
Cedar City.
Oh, it's Cedar City.
Yeah, student engagement in conservative things is not very high in Cedar City, so we want to change that. So, yeah, good.
Yeah, I think Tanner will do a great job down there, and will be the driving force to change that. And I just want to start off. My name is Riley Beasley. I appreciate you guys having us on the God and Country podcast. This is one of my favorite shows. One, because you guys are our hosts, and then 2, you get to drive up in this beautiful area. You have a beautiful podcast studio here, and I just love it, and I appreciate you having us, and and allowing the college Republicans, the Utah Federation of College Republicans, and really young voices in general to come and have a platform and a great platform of that. So I would say hopefully like and share this and buy a t-shirt too.
Nice.
Ben.
Awesome. So I'm Ben Priest. I'm originally from Salt Lake City. I was born there. I spent most of my childhood actually in Southern California, living in Oceanside, California. It's in the San Diego area. And I moved out here to Utah back last August. And I know I'm wearing red. I'm definitely a happy red Utah fan. I actually go to UVU. I will be going to Utah though for my future MBA. But I've been getting involved at the UVU chapter currently with our fellow colleague Sage with UVU College Republicans, and I'm also a former intern for Congressman Burgess Owens. That ended.
Oh, we love him.
Yeah, he's great. He's awesome. I actually ended that yesterday. As you know, the semester will start next week, but it was a phenomenal experience, and I'm definitely honored and glad to be helping you guys out here.
Well, you young adults are often, these particular young adults are more informed than the majority of the adults that we have commenting on our sections for sure. But I think your voice is super important.
We spend an awkward amount of time on some of this stuff.
Yeah. I imagine it's got to be a crazy amount of awkward conversations because you're amongst a lot of students all the time. Like most of us adults, when we're at home, we go to work, go home, we're with the kids, don't have really a massive amount of opportunities to discuss politics except for
We
with
go
our
out there,
neighbors or something like that. But
Benjamin has no idea how much work he's going to do down at UVU. But when you
I
get out there,
imagine UVU,
let's do it. Yeah,
imagine
we're gonna
UVU
put
is
you
going to be
work, man.
less work than what's
I'm
up
gonna
at
be
the
down
U
there
of
with
you.
We'll see. Every school
I
has different
graduated
barriers
from
that they put up.
UVU, and it was pretty conservative, and it's a lot more conservative than U of you. So
We'll see. I'll be spending more time down there, but tabling is a blast. You get people that come up. We've had people like call us Nazis and spit at us. And
if you guys are
it gets pretty wild.
tabling, I want to be there. You
want to come sometime?
every time.
Okay, I will invite you. Yeah,
We'll set up the cameras and everything. We'll go live with it.
And we've gotten kind of weird with it to the point where we'll have like 20 people outside the table that are just college Republicans, and it's like, hey, this is your community, right? Like to any conservative on campus, you can get canceled, and guess what? We're still here.
Let's set up the mics and
We're
bring
canceled
people up
together.
to Mark.
Yeah. No, it's been great. It's been awesome to build our chapter at the U. Excited to see the other ones.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
And building off of that, you guys have anytime you want an open invitation to any one of the universities that we're on. We're on 8 in the state of Utah, all the major ones, then 1 in South Korea. So if you find yourself in South
global
Korea, we'd love to have you
organization.
out there.
I'll touch on a little bit about that one in South Korea. Do you have anything to? I'm just curious. I haven't heard that until today, actually.
Yeah, so the University of Utah has a satellite campus out in Seoul, South Korea. So we have a group of college Republicans out there and total patriots. We love love to see that the work that they're doing isn't just here in Utah, but it's global.
That's awesome. Well, being up on campus like we were just starting, you guys are around students all the time, not like us adults. You're around students and the conversation's more amplified, I guess, amongst the youth. The youth tend to get more active. They're the ones that goes out to all the protests. If the left wants protesters, where do they go? They go to the universities, and they kind of start rallying up the protesters. So how fun is the conversations up on campus, and how liberal is it going, and how many conservatives are actually guys pulling in? Yeah, I hear a mix of both, right? There's a lot of really good conservative people, but then there's...
Yeah, I would love to speak on that. It's one of the interesting things when I live just outside of Salt Lake City, and they do protests there all the time. It's a weird mix because you do get definitely the younger base, the students, the liberals that you would see in a classroom, right? But you also see what usually would probably look like an old folks home, right? Like a retirement home. You have this weird mix where it's really old individuals that really, maybe, I don't know whether it's they dislike Trump or that, but that's usually who makes up these protests. And then you have these college liberals who I really think just really haven't got any experience out in the workforce and understood maybe how the government comes in and takes your paycheck, right? And maybe once that happens, they'll tend to lean more conservative. But we're seeing a really politically engaged generation coming up, and you're seeing it both on the left and on the right. And our vision and mission is really just to activate and incentivize those on the right to get involved and understand why America is the greatest country to ever exist, why our principles matter, and then why conservatives do things better than the left. I think it's a stark contrast when you see those who complain and then those who actually do. And I would definitely attribute the left to being the complainers, and that's why you see them protesting and not those on the right.
Well, those are fireworks when you say that the right does things better than the left.
Sometimes it's because we just let people do what they want to do, and that ends up having better outcomes. I was concerned about telling everybody.
Let's dive into that. What are your opinions on why does the right do things better than the left? And then let's talk about it from the opposite point of view. Why does the left think that they're got a better program, that they're superior to what the conservatives are bringing to the table? Go for it.
Man, I could rant about this for 2 hours. You're going to have to cut me off at some point. But start with socialism, which emerged as a critique on classical liberalism. Classical liberalism was rooted in private property ownership. The founding fathers, they were classical liberals. They wanted democratic institutions, human rights protections via constitutions, and free markets. Socialism emerged as a critique on those concepts. It's fundamentally un-American, and it's continued to evolve and I think really plant its roots in our universities today and the bureaucracies in every institution for that matter, the media, everything, right? And so, again, we started off this country, and I think the right continues to champion this idea that individual human beings they have self-ownership. We want them to kind of just go about life as they want, and that's going to produce the best outcomes. There's spontaneous order that emerges from that. The socialists have a more, they like to describe it as a scientific view of humanity, and they feel that they can, sort of turn human beings into their subjects, like mice, and, test us and see what works and what doesn't. They're paternalistic is my favorite word for it, because they feel that for some reason they're entitled to arbitrarily make decisions on our behalf. So the socialists, their whole worldview hinges on this idea of having a few elites basically dictate your whole life. And ours is, well, we want people to go about life as they and God intend.
We want to govern ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And they think they can do a better job at governing us.
They do. And so that's just one of the reasons why we do better, is because we let ideas and markets and businesses compete. And from that, they're refined and they become better and the best emerge. But the socialists, they choose arbitrarily what's good. They don't let it emerge from this, this battle and see which ideas die and which were bad. They want to tell us which ones are the good ones. And it's just really maladaptive, because that's going to guide behavior. And ultimately, we're going to base our actions on bad information and whether it's in the economy or ideas or whatever. So just fundamentally, that's why the right is always going to be better than the socialists, just right off the bat, because of the framework that we operate under.
Well, Tanner, when you're talking about socialism particularly, they get this attitude where we're for the people. We're going to take care of people. We're for the poor people. We're for the working class. Everybody should be able to benefit. Everybody should have health care. There should be certain rights as human beings that we should just have.
Yeah.
And it's not just rights. It's like a certain living lifestyle, right? You should have at minimum certain amount of food, certain amount of health care, a certain amount of a home that you're living under. They just said there's certain standards we should care for. Why is that so appealing to the younger generation, and why are we moving away from earning it?
Well, I think it's just like pretty simple. We live in a very materialistic world now. Like everybody's got to have like the shiny new thing, and inflation just keeps going up. So, you want the free stuff. You want stuff that you don't have to work super hard for, right? You want to take the road that's like not as hard to travel. But I think that's the thing, is like people want all this free stuff and they associate that with socialism, but that's not necessarily what socialism is. I mean, these socialists on campus complain about the elites in this society making decisions for them, and they want the free stuff, and they look towards like the Nordic countries, and as an example, they're like, oh, they get all this free stuff and they're free people. Well, the Nordic countries constantly say, no, we're not socialist. We believe in private. We believe in private ownership. We just have enormously high taxes. And I think that's something that the socialists are really good at, is even confusing their base with what socialism actually is, which is instead of going from these like what they believe is like business elites controlling their lives to this central planning of political elites that would still be controlling their lives, still making decisions for them. And it's all wrapped, like you said, in that message of, oh, but you get free stuff. Well, that quality of free stuff's going to go down too.
It's not only wrapped in the stuff where you get free stuff, but it's wrapped in this guys that we're here to help people, and you guys are trying to depress them. The right is trying to oppress people, trying to control people. It's big business that's suppressing the worker.
Right.
We're not here to help anybody. We don't like charitable organizations. Every man for themselves. They try to paint this evil picture that's what we're all about. And it's this rhetoric that starts churning in the 24-hour news cycle that just paints a really, really horrible picture. And whereas we're for the people, we're for the working class. We want to help the poor. We want to help the immigrant and the migrant.
Right.
Give everybody a hand up, right? Let's just, across the board, just give everybody a hand up. Let's all be nice. The billionaires have way too much money as it is. Let's just take it all from them.
Yeah. Well, and they claim to be like so embracing of like these diverse ideas until somebody gives an idea that they don't like, and then they automatically cast them out of their group. So,
or until they're the ones where we have to take from, right?
Or exactly.
Until it hits their pocketbook.
Yeah.
There's an interesting video, and I don't think I got it up here, that had a guy going around college campuses, and we'll put this over to Ben here, where he was saying, well, if you got such a high GPA, why don't we just share that and just give some of your points to the forces? and all of them were like, in unison, you don't understand how hard I've been working for that GPA. I mean, I slave on studying all day long. I don't think that's fair at all. And he's like, well, what about socialism then? Should we just do the same thing with your labor, with your work? And then all of a sudden, you can tell they're thinking about it. They can understand the point you just made, but they don't want to comment about it because they're like, he's right, but I don't want to admit he's right. Type of an attitude. What do you think, Ben?
No, I love the grade point analogy because I've heard that a lot. And coming from California, funny enough, a lot of schools are starting to do very similar programs that not necessarily penalizing you for your academic success, but they're making it easier for you to not fail. And from a moral compass perspective, failure is the greatest teacher. And so for a lot of children, if they're being taught, oh, just do what you can, there's no ceiling, but there's no floor.
Everyone will get a trophy.
Exactly.
Just do your best.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the classic little kid participation trophy analogy. And so you're pumping these kids out from California that, yes, they graduated high school, they graduated college, but their brain is like a box of rocks. They don't really know what. And then if we look at literacy levels, mathematic levels, writing levels even, they're horrible. And they're always at the bottom of the barrel for all 50 states. And that's a problem.
That's really sad.
Yeah, it is. It's very disappointing. And a lot of things, too, have changed with standardized testing. Now, standardized testing has its own pros and cons, but they decided post-COVID in 2020 to eliminate standardized testing. But not to say that it was unfair academically. They blamed it on DEI. They said it didn't give the middle class or even the poor, the oppressed students that don't have the time to study and become these brainiacs. So they decided, well, we're just going to eliminate standardized testing to get in the colleges. You thought, oh, well, that'd be a great idea. Everyone gets to go to these big universities. Well, what happened was, in fact, you actually only had more and more unintelligent people going to college. And I'm all for learning. I'm all for educational opportunity. But you have to do it in a way that is actually forcing people to learn, not just show up and get you.
Well, it goes beyond that, too, because the more and more I see liberal students coming out of these big universities, the more I see students that simply can't handle life, right? They just can't handle it. They're very, very quickly triggered. I saw a pretty liberal guy getting arrested, and he was literally just like a kid with throwing a fit on the middle of the grocery store. He literally couldn't handle himself, and the officer's like, "You stole something, you're going to jail." And he's like, "Don't touch me." And he's like, and he was literally just like with his fists out there, and you're talking about a grown 26, 7, 28-year-old man that literally cannot handle himself when he's just like,
He can't do anything.
he can't function. He can't function. I'm like, and the commentary's like, this guy's never going to get married. He's never going to have a family because he can't function.
Right.
And I'm seeing that more and more where
We're breaking down feedback loops.
Yeah,
So that you can improve yourself and become better, right?
you have had no struggles. Everything's been handed to you. You've been given a lot of gifts. School's been made a lot easier. And when you can't struggle, that very, very famous saying that I have on my desk, if you go into my office, is right above my desk. It says, weak times or bad times make strong men make good times make weak men make bad times.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's this horse cycle. And I don't know how long it's going to take us to pull out, but we've got a lot of very, very weak men out there.
I can tell you, these young men, we've got a lot of strong young men. So I'm thinking maybe the millennials must have been weak. I'm just kidding. We love our millennials. But seriously, I've been really impressed by the quality of young men that we're able to rope into this movement. I'm always optimistic, but I think I have good cause for it too. So you would be impressed at what we've been able to gather and do. It's like Benjamin's brand new. Right? I am. And he just showed up. And we have hundreds more like that under the umbrella of the college Republicans. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to create good times.
Well, let's go through the definition of socialism here, and we're going to turn to Charlie Kirk to get that definition, and then let's discuss it. So,
what is your definition of socialism, Conley?
Well, in the theoretical, the abstract, or the practical?
Take your pick.
So socialism, as written by Marx, is when the workers own the means of production. Exactly. In the actual practical, it's when a small group of very powerful, pernicious people are able to control the rest of the population under the guise of helping the many, when in reality it helps the few, and you get dictatorship, murder, and slaughter, and the revolution never actually comes.
Okay.
It ends in 100 million people dead over the last 100 years.
What about American companies that function as worker cooperatives, which are effectively socialism in practice?
That is partially some of the tenets of Marx. Of course it is. Like Publix grocery stores in Florida.
Okay. So you're in favor of worker cooperatives then?
Yeah, if it's done voluntarily, that's the key.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree.
For example, in a church, if you go to a church and everyone says we're going to go share this meal, that's a voluntary cooperation. But socialism is not hinged on voluntarism. It's using a gun. It's by force you must be part of this. By force you must give us your money. By force you're going to be part of our cooperative. Voluntarism is something we all support. It's when you start to use the heavy hand of the state that we start to object it.
I agree. I'm not here to defend Cuba, China, the USSR, or any of that.
Or Vietnam, or
No.
Laos, or Cambodia,
So
or Rhodesia, or Zimbabwe.
So basically, if we can agree that voluntary worker ownership of the means of production,
If they so choose.
okay,
It can work. It also can fall apart. There's plenty of instances where it does. Because the problem is that the incentive structure sometimes for innovation with voluntary cooperatives is not always very strong or robust. But yes, in a market, you're allowed, for example, I have no problem with the Amish living the way they do in Pennsylvania.
neither do I.
Yes, however, I do have a problem saying we're going to force you to live like the Amish. That's where we disagree.
the funny thing about talking about socialism is half the people we talk to about socialism have no idea what socialism really is. They start referring to cooperatives. In our own comments section, people refer to, well, isn't a public library socialism? Isn't the police, fire, and public schools, isn't that all socialism because we pay for it as a communion? I'm like, no, that is not what socialism is. When we come together as a society and we say there's certain things we have to pay for in order to have a society like streets and roads and police and fire and military so we can protect ourselves and things of that nature, that is not socialism. Socialism is like what he says, where all the money or the vast majority of the money gets funneled to the state. and then the state redistributes it as they see it fit, right? As all of a sudden you have this hierarchy of individuals that say, we're going to force this upon everybody, and we're going to distribute it as we think is right. And then they start it on the premise of, we're going to help the poor, we're going to help the needy, and we're going to force all this. But it never turns out to like that. If you look at Hitler, if you look at any socialist country, if you look at Venezuela just recently, when we went and took him out, the elitists at the top had everything. People down at the bottom had nothing, and they were literally begging, pleading for food, killing the rats in the streets. And that, it always, every single time it turns into that. And I hate it when young kids come out, well, they just didn't do the socialism right. We're going to do it right this time. And I'm
Well,
like,
the only way socialism can be right is if those in charge are all righteous, good people. We can't
but again, that's
that
not, that's,
until Christ is in charge.
but that's not,
Never
that's not,
work.
that's not socialism though. I mean, that's,
There's a sort of deeper idea, and I think Tanner will be able to piggyback on this. There's a wonderful pamphlet that was written, I think, in the early 1900s called "The Law" by Frederick Bastiat.
It's French, so we might butcher it.
But it's not a long read, and a lot of us were able to say what we don't want the government to look like. This does a really good job of saying what the government ought to look like, and what you have to understand fundamentally is that the government is how we organize force, and so everything that the government does is inherently, like Charlie said in the video, backed by a gun or a military, and so what we have to be able to do is anytime the government's doing something, we have to ask ourselves, is this a just use of force? Am I justified enforcing the allocation of resources, which means taking it from somebody to allocate it to whatever this purpose is? I think very frequently we're going to find that the answer is actually no, and that people can generally allocate resources best on their own.
Yeah, I think if you ever read the law, there's a word that will stick out to you throughout the entire pamphlet, and that's plunder, right?
Yes.
I love the word plunder, and the allocation of somebody's resource and the redistribution of it to other people is what the law would consider plunder. You're literally stealing something that somebody worked for, and you're redistributing it to other people, and it's plunder. It's stealing, and that's why I think socialism at a more like spiritual level is just wrong. You're stealing from other people what they've rightfully earned themselves. So
and now there's another idea that comes from a guy named Yuval Levin. He's still alive, and he distinguishes institutions as kind of what I thought was profound. So he's saying the government is an institution, right? If we look back to the law, well, it's the institution of force. There are other institutions that shape culture and families and communities. Churches, for example. You could even say the family or a community is in and of itself an institution. And what Yuval Levin argues is, I don't know that he says this, but the left has made the government their cultural institution. They force culture on us.
so they've made it their religion.
They have, right? And that's the thing is
It's
our
become their
religion sits in a separate institution. So they often, try to say, well, you accept a certain amount of authority from, for Catholic, the Pope, or for me, Dallin Oaks, our prophet. But the thing is that's a totally separate institution that's not using force at all. And so those institutions, we're fine with them doing whatever they want. And we as conservatives have to strengthen them. I can't just say we need a more Christian or a more religious country. I have to go to church. I have to raise a family, right? And there's nothing about that needs to happen in the government. What I need to do in regard to government is get them to cut it out. Like, hey, trans stuff, that's a total social pathogen. That makes no sense whatsoever. If you go look at the data, after about 5 to 6 years, it's not helping them anyway. You're kind of pushing this cultural idea on me that has no basis, completely arbitrary, with the force of government. And that's where we as conservatives become frustrated, because anytime you're using government to do anything, you're using force, or much more reluctant to use government for those other purposes than they are.
Now, in saying that, you have the opposition saying, you just hate trans people.
Well, I
That's hate speech.
I think the most loving position you can have is to seriously scrutinize this trans thing. Yeah, we as conservatives, we believe in conflicting ideas. I'll tell you who didn't, Vladimir Lenin, right? He had this idea. The reason he went and slaughtered a whole bunch of people and starved millions of people to death is because he felt there was no line between socialism and capitalism, and socialism had to win at all costs, right? I believe in discourse. I believe in engaging with ideas that we disagree with. I disagree passionately with the idea that a man can be a woman. And again, you go look at the data. There was a meta-analysis released in 2024, analyzed more than 100,000 cases, and every outcome imaginable: suicidal ideation, suicide, poverty, crime rate, lifespan, all of it was worse after about 5 years. Now, most of the studies we had before that didn't go beyond 5 years, and I don't know if that's intentional or not. But when you look at that, the only thing that remained the same, and it wasn't statistically significant, which is it didn't get worse, it didn't get better, and that wasn't, the data is sketchy on that, was their gender euphoria, or dysphoria rather. It got marginally better. Again, wasn't statistically significant. The rest of that stuff was, though. And so tell me how it's loving to be satisfied with that outcome. Tell me how it's loving to let somebody go and get a surgery that mutilates them, and now they're the social outcast. They can't find passion or romance in their lives. They're an outcast in every way, and they live this miserable life after, and they die earlier, and they live in poverty, and they have all these health issues and this pain. How is that a loving thing to accept? It's simply not. So yeah, that's my take.
But we believe in their right to do so. As a grown adult, somebody should be able to choose to live that lifestyle. I will treat you with love and respect, but I'm not going to shout from the rooftop that is a good way to live.
Sure. When somebody is beyond the age of 18, if they really choose to do that, I don't really see how it's my place to use government to stop them. But what we've been doing is using government to encourage it.
Yeah.
And that's the insane part. That's what we got to stop
Same thing,
doing.
right? Same thing.
It is the reverse,
And at a very, very dangerously young age.
Right. Yeah, and anybody under 18 should be totally off limits. The fact that any of this is a conversation is insane. But again, like my framework for government is it's not the cultural institution. So if you want to go engage in some, cultural wackery on your own, that's fine. But it certainly shouldn't be subsidized. It shouldn't be pushed by the government. And if the government is to do anything in its interest of protecting life, then it should actually be discouraging this form of treatment.
I will say it's kind of interesting. I was the intern for Representative Rex Shipp of the Utah House of Representatives, and he doesn't get enough credit for this online anywhere, but he tried to pass a law for 6 years that made a moratorium on hormonal treatments for minors permanent. And after 6 years, this last general session, it finally passed. And I remember standing on the Senate floor as Representative Shipp got this passed. And I just think one of the things which is interesting, one about socialism and two, the trans movement, is it preaches this like false philanthropy or this false loving kindness of embracing people. But through that course of getting that bill passed, we met detransitioners who were outcasts after realizing like what they did to their bodies, right? I think it was so interesting that this false choice that they would give these kids. It's like, well, either you like trans your kid or they kill themselves, right? And when
but they're using something completely fake to push that narrative. Why? Because they have an agenda behind it.
Well, that's not even true. There's so many studies that also show that suicidal ideations increase after transition too. So
dramatically, it's not even close. It's just a huge. Yeah. I want to play this quick video that goes off what you were saying, that talks about where essentially as a government we're using the gun and stealing people's money. So, and then I want to get your opinion on it, Riley.
They're just bad people.
Would you say it's immoral though to take someone's money that they have worked for or earned?
No.
That's stealing?
No, I don't think so. Because in a way, like, you're stealing from other people and that you're stealing like their opportunity to live a life of dignity. I think it's valid to steal their money.
I thought you said it wasn't stealing though.
Okay, well, it is stealing. Let's steal. But I think if we're going to call it stealing, then I still think it's valid. And also, it's not really stealing, it's a tax, And if it is stealing, good. Let it be stealing.
So good. Let's steal it.
That guy.
Let's just steal, right?
Plunders.
I mean, there's hardly a response to that. What?
Yeah, I'm speechless that those words would even come out of anybody's mouth. He says stealing is good, almost entirely word for word there.
When you do it.
Yeah, I think that's the mindset of a lot of people right now. You see across the aisle, both on the left and the right, that affordability is one of their biggest issues, right? Amongst others. But that seems to be the narrow leader when people are asked or polled, what is your top issue? And I think when people see an unattainable American dream, this is some sort of resort that they go to. And I think it's incredibly negative. And I think it's something that the Republicans really need to go out and lead on. And I think this is being echoed by our incredible Vice President J.D. Vance right now as well, that Republicans need to do more than talk about these issues. They need to get down to the nitty-gritty work and actually solve issues. And so that goes back to my prior point of Republicans are doers, the left are complainers. That guy is a complainer. I wish him maybe the ability to reap the benefits of this country, and then if he really loves this ideology, move to a country like Cuba or another, if that's what he truly adores. But I think it's really interesting that in a socialist city or country, you have a lack of a degree of agency, right? And I think the beauty of what we have in America is you have agency to go forth and build the American dream, right? It might be more difficult than it was in prior times, but now everybody still has the ability to make it big, to own the home, to start a family, to have children, to have the beautiful pursuit of happiness and make a better life for themselves than maybe that even the parents had for them. And I think that's where you don't see that in socialist systems, right? It's just not.
Well, we talk about this in my work. That's an abundance mentality, right? The scarcity mentality is the social mentality that I can't achieve any of those things unless the government does it for me. No amount of work, I am somehow so repressed that no amount of work I do is ever going to result in anything successful. And if you did it, somehow you were cheating, stealing, and you better give me some reparations on what
It's
you
just white
achieved.
privilege, right? It's like white privilege. And I laugh at those statements because I've built several companies from literally my living room from nothing. And I grew up, my parents were dirt poor. We had nothing growing up. And I've made everything that I've made in my career for my own sweat. I mean, it is tough work because and people are like, well,
Did you ever fail?
Oh, yeah, dozens of
And
times.
what did that failure do for you?
Yes, taught me not to do anything stupid again.
But failure is the best teacher.
Exactly.
But then they also paint this picture, and you can get into the whole race thing that, well, even though it's difficult for you, even though it's tough for you, at least you had the chance to do it because you're white, right? If you're black, the people wouldn't have given you the same chance. They would have bought the same stuff from you. They want to let you set up. I'm like, that's false too, because I've seen a lot of Latins, I've seen a lot of Asians, and people think all the Asians they're just smart. I'm like, well, I've seen a lot of small Filipino people, and I've seen everything build multi-million-dollar companies. And when you give yourself excuses like that, you're really just shooting yourself in the foot and failing, because it's your mindset that's failing. It's not what society is teaching you to do. But when you have a mindset like this, they have this zero-sum game where if you succeed, that means I'm failing. It's not where you're succeeding is not affecting me at all. It's if you're Bill Gates or if you're Elon Musk and you're making billions and trillions of dollars, you're doing it on the backs of the workers. They're the ones that are creating the company. You're not doing anything with the company. They're sustaining the companies. They're creating the companies. It's their labor that's making you rich. They're the reason you're rich, is all these hard workers are making you rich. It wasn't the blood, sweat, and tears of his nights without sleep. It wasn't his ideas. It wasn't his sacrifice and his ability to work off of nothing to try to create a company out of nothing and take the massive risks that it would take of failing and losing everything. I've been in companies where, and I've had employees complain, I'm like, yes, I'm making more money than you, but you could quit and go get a job someplace else tomorrow. I can't, because I have all these, everybody comes down. Everybody could walk out. I can't just walk out because of the responsibilities that comes with being a business owner. There's too many obligations, too many suppliers and factories and everything else that I have to deal with. There's government taxes, and the sad thing about government taxes is like payroll taxes are not owed, according to law, are not owed by the business. They're owed by the owner. So I'm held liable for your payroll taxes if they're not paid. Personally, not through my business, which is crazy. But you can see how liberal this guy is because we're 2026 and he's still wearing a mask. But
And it's an interesting thing when you see that. You almost know when someone's wearing a mask nowadays. Oh, right, you might be a liberal, might be a socialist. So it's
Don't give them the word liberal, right? They're radical Marxists.
there you go.
It's nuts.
Let's just go further into that point where they have this mindset of stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. They think Robin Hood is a hero, but there's a big difference between, again, what Charlie Kirk was saying is doing it by the gun, doing it by the power of government, and voluntarily doing it. If you're doing it through a church, you're doing it through a charity. Christ has always said, feed the poor, raise the sick, right? That's what but he wants us to do it. We had mentioned this back in Moms for America on our podcast last week. It's us doing it. We should be helping those. It's not the hard hand of the government forcing it, because all that leads to is corruption. Because eventually the government officials that are deciding on where to distribute wealth to always tend to distribute it to themselves and to those they know. And then over time, slowly but surely, the poor get poorer and they're not helped. And the elitists, because it's not even the wealthy, because the wealthy get poor too after that point, is just those are part of the party, those that are in the know, those that have their friends at the top, those that are in that. I mean, they always call it the party when you're talking about Hitler or Stalin and like that. If you're a member of the party, then you're the one that gets all the power. You're the one that gets all the benefit.
I think Jordan Peterson, he said he did a debate with a communist one time, and he said you're basically like, you complain about these elite people in business, but when you go into a more socialist communist society, you're just trading one elite class for another elite class, and so it just ends up doing the same thing, like you said. So
I think, capitalism is an experiment just as much as socialism, right? Too. And when you actually dive into the history of it, I mean, the stats don't lie, right? Capitalism lifts more people out of poverty than socialism does by far. And socialism by far, it might put you to your deathbed, right? So I think we really are to great benefit to live in a great country like America that values capitalism. And I think we're incredibly blessed because of that. And, another thing too, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. When you look at us and when you look at some of our stats, we are the most charitable state in the nation, in the country. It's Utah. I don't even think the second comes very close. And then when you also look at our voluntary service hours, we're number one. We lead the country. And it's not because we're being forced, we're being told to do that. It's because out of the goodwill of our hearts, we decide to do that because, Joseph Smith said, I have taught them good principles and they govern themselves, right? And that's the most true statement. And I think it's the most well-represented thing that you could say about somebody that's from Utah and maybe even a member of our faith, our shared faith. But it's one of those things, when you take away someone's agency to do good, that's what you end up with socialism. That's when you end up with a structure that doesn't incentivize innovation, doesn't incentivize individual prosperity, and it doesn't incentivize anything other than complaining and taking from somebody else. And that's where you have that last individual that we watched have that mindset of seeking to steal instead of grow or serve others.
And I don't know of any Christian religion in the United States that forces their congregation to pay their tithing when they pass the plate. I don't know one that forces them to go volunteer to help when there's a flood or an earthquake. But people go and volunteer and give of their own good free will. We had these devastating fires that I hope right now are under control, the closest one here. And early on, before the evacuation orders, you were seeing on many of the group sites where they were asking for people, if you have a ranch or farm area or a barn or anything in these townships, and you have the ability to take animals, we are going to start evacuating them pre-volunteer. The government didn't need to tell them to do that. Nobody forced them to do that. Those people came together like a community of people of faith to do those things. And we don't need government telling us what to do. We can manage ourselves.
That's the Utah we're fighting for, by the way. That's what we want to keep.
Yeah.
We're losing that.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, when you have people getting elected to office, even our system, a lot of times they forget that it's we the people govern ourselves. And when you get any type of government official, whether they're elected into office or they're appointed or they just take power, and they start holding secrets, concealing things, we know better than them, so we're not going to disclose everything, whether it's data centers or it's MIDA or whatever it is, or it's immigration or not. I mean, it could be any number of principles. When you're trying to conceal something, it's no longer we the people, right? Because we the people need to know everything. Everything is an open book. Everything needs to be full disclosure because we the people govern. And a lot of people lose that. That's where government becomes this entity that's unpenetrable, has the last say, has the supreme power. You have to do what the government says. And the second you get that mentality, you've lost the true nature of the Constitution because it's no longer we the people. Let's go to this comment where obviously with campuses, we can take this over to Ben here. When you're up on campus, when you're with students, you can always ask them, well, why do you like socialism? What makes socialism so important? And then as you see in this video, when you ask them to define it, they struggle.
Socialism a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, I think people kind of throw that word around to try to scare you. But if helping people is socialism, then I'm for it.
It could really benefit our country in the future.
I think it's a good idea.
Socialism as a concept, as a philosophy is good. I think that it's got a bad rep.
Trying to spread the wealth is definitely a good thing in America, and it's definitely a thing that's needed.
There's a lot of things with social welfare that I think would be good to have.
Do you have a positive reaction to socialism or a negative one?
I'd say a more positive one. I'm definitely more open to it.
We should have a standard of living for all people. Okay. Just by default, that should just be available.
If we did it democratically, then we could really incorporate socialism.
Like, it definitely seems like a more feasible option, and it could help more people. Like, just as a broad term, it could help more people.
So what's the common theme here is helping the people. It's going to have a better chance of helping people. It's going to help people. We're going to be able to spread the wealth. I think spreading the wealth in the United States is a good thing. Always tends to boil down to that. Why do you think that is? Then go ahead.
Yeah, I think I first see the demographic. Young college kids, they're living on their own for the first time. We talked a little bit about earlier adulting, having life experience. Riley talked about how a lot of these college kids don't have no work experience. Some don't even work at all. So they're becoming systemic in the way that they feel like they have to just pull from the government on everything. So they like this idea of free, like the big F word. They like that. They think that, if the government can give me everything and I can be fine and I don't have to worry about anything or anyone else. But what about the rest of the people? What about the middle class people? What about even the upper class that start the businesses that employ people and improve the economy? We're the ones that have to pay for all this free stuff. It's uneconomical. And you study quantitative economics, I'm sure everything I talked about is pretty spot on. Like, that's my first issues. They think that free just means easier, but if that was the way, when they come out in 4 years and they graduate, they're only just gonna find themselves in the hole and in the mess that they created.
What would the point of graduating be if you could just had that standard set way of living that everybody else has? You know, what would be the point of graduating?
No, I think
we have a set standard.
Absolutely.
Well, I see a lot of these kids are coming out of high school, right? They've never supported themselves. They've never really paid a bill. Mom and dad's taking care of everything. They get into college for the first time. They're starting to get a little taste of what it means to actually pay bills. Adults, I doubt any of these guys are paying a mortgage yet. They don't have kids yet. There's a lot of learning, and they're so young they haven't experienced life at all. And I look back at, when I was in college, it was just almost 30 years ago. So I knew nothing compared to what I know now. I had zero experiences, nothing. I knew nothing about life. I had already started my first business at 21, and I was doing contracting and started getting a very, very quick taste of what it means to have your own business going. But I think a lot of the big issues behind socialism is, particularly amongst the youth, is they're coming from where everything's been paid for, everything's been handed to them and given to them, to all of a sudden where it's not, and they haven't been able to learn any type of coping skills. A lot of parents they're teaching their kids how to work, how to labor, what good work ethic is, good principles, and some of them are a little lax in that category and don't really teach them how to work and what to do. So, I mean, what do you feel about kids coming out of high school nowadays? Are we lacking in experience? Or?
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you, doing high school, and hearing from my parents when they went to high school, they took a culinary class. They took an automotive maintenance class. They took a financial literacy class and learned how to pay your taxes, how to even get a job. They don't teach you that anymore.
Nope.
And those are pretty essential, in my opinion. I've had to do that, but I always tell people I had to do that all by myself. Because
a lot of the trades were in high schools too. You had welding and carpentry and all that kind of stuff in the high school, and they don't. I knew several of my high school buddies that came out of high school full welders. I mean, just full on welders. You know how much money that pays coming out of high school?
That's really good money.
In our area, we're blessed where we have those technical centers that are supporting the high school, so the kids will opt into those with release time and for very little money and get a really good trade where they can make money. But yeah, it used to be in the school.
I think Utah has a good opportunity because I see where I live in Utah County, you have a lot of these smaller trade school and trade tech programs, which is great. And I think you need more of those because from an economic standpoint, those middle class, blue collar jobs, we need more of those because that is so essential for our economy. But from a virtue standpoint, that teaches hard work.
That's right.
And more people are being taught just sit back for 4 years, let the government do everything for you, you get your degree, then you can go work in a high rise 9 to 5 and never have to really get sweaty, get dirty. Nothing against people that are working in big corporate America. Because if you actually ask those people, they got to work hard too to get where they're at. Running a big bank or any big industry in the United States that's making us so strong. We talked about Elon Musk and Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all these great entrepreneurs. They had to hustle. They may not look like it because they're not climbing a high rise to build buildings or do electrical work, but that alone, they're hustling. It's the principle of hard work that we don't teach our children in education from a moral perspective.
And we're all different. I mean, they try to box us all in like we should all be like Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. Well, if he's able to do that hustle, that's not comfortable for everybody. Other people want to create and build, and I do want to go out and get dirty and see the satisfaction of my labors when I'm done. But we're different, and we have different things, ideals that we aspire to.
Yeah, labor economists, they try to put a value on what they call leisure, which is whatever you're doing when you're not working. What we find for most people is that after some point, they start to prefer leisure over labor. Leisure becomes more valuable. And then you get freaks like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk that it's like they hate.
They don't know how to stop working.
Yeah, and they don't know how to stop. And so you get anomalies like that. And the cool part about the free market is all the way from the idea of like specialization, we too get to see people specialize. But what that really means is that they get to share their gift to the world because that provides value to other people.
I like how you said gift. I think I'm a big fan of Elon Musk because I don't know. And I like how we're going to tie this together. Elon Musk has a gift that most of the world doesn't have.
He suffers immensely, by the way. Like, if you ever look at his interviews, he's like, you do not want to be me. And I don't.
Yeah. I think he knows a little bit of the reality hole he kind of dug himself into with all this success. But I like how you said that not everyone is meant to be like a Steve Jobs or not everyone's meant to be like Elon Musk. Some people are really good craftsmen. I have a cousin who is just a phenomenal, ever since we were little, we would hang out, he would just build stuff. I don't know how he did it. My head can never compute. I'm thinking, how does he just get so creative with this? And now he's working in construction in St. George and he's just doing really well. And I love to see how that's going. And then there's people that are really good in mathematics and they can be really good accountants. They can do really good in business economics, build great corporations and employ good people, and that there's good money there too. But it's the diversity opportunity, and it's the diversity opportunity that capitalism provides. Socialism doesn't do that. It's all enslavement to one person, one group of
Interests.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, entrepreneurship dies. That drive to create dies. It all dies because you're not incentivized to do anything at that point. The incentives are gone, completely gone.
Well,
And a part of this, and you can comment on it, is they always commented here on, I want to help people, it's going to help people, and it's always this pull to the heartstrings, right? Well, we got to help people. Why does that tend to work so easily amongst liberals and the youth to persuade them towards socialism? Because it's not going to help the poor people in the end.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think it goes back to like, who doesn't want to hear that they're going to receive free stuff? Like, I would be lying if I told you that I didn't want free stuff, right? But at the end of the day, nothing's really ever free. I think when we go back to maybe our prior conversation there, and we go back to the curriculum being, you said just years ago, you were learning these things, and we're experiencing that we have not had that similar situation, right? We aren't learning the financial literacy. We aren't learning culinary. We aren't learning to weld in high school. And I think the result of that is you're not learning these, these good skills, right? That would get you a manufacturing job. And I think one of the things that we see the reason for that is that a lot of our manufacturing and everything's been offshored. It's been set overseas. And we've been told Americans won't do that job. I mean, Americans don't need to do that. We can send it over somewhere else and do it elsewhere. And one of the things that you're seeing there is, one, we don't have a manufacturing base. But when you look at a recent study, you're seeing Utah is one of the most educated states in the country. More people in Utah decide to go to college than anywhere else. But you are seeing in our biggest city, in Salt Lake City, that the employment rate for college graduates is just above 12%. It is the lowest in the entire country, meaning that we have more people in Utah going to college getting an education than not, and they are not able to get a job. The worst place to try to find a job right now is Salt Lake City. Where is the most educated people? In Utah, in Salt Lake City. So the correlation between those two things is really that, when you go back to the video there and you ask about sharing, right? These people are favoring socialism, but the person that is favoring that is also the kid who wasn't able to share as a child, right? I think it's a real predicament when you want to favor a system, but you as a child likely weren't even able to share, right? I mean, I don't know, you guys, I don't have children yet, but I remember as a child, sharing wasn't really my thing either, right? if you put a really big cookie on my plate, and maybe there wasn't one on Tanner's over there, it would be a real tough decision for me to maybe cut mine in half. And I think that's really where the socialist mindset is too. They have nothing. They don't have anything to share, but they want everything to be shared with them, but they have nothing to provide or offer. And I'm not saying that's everyone in our generation, but it's really the mindset of the liberals. And I think Gen Z, I think our generation has a lot to offer. I think we're hungry to find these jobs. We're doing everything that we're told to. We're going to college. The American dream is still there, but it is much harder to obtain when you have a 12% chance to get a job in Salt Lake City. And then when you have immigration tied into that, where jobs are going to people who are demanding or requesting lower wages, or they're just simply being sent overseas.
I like how you talked about that, because the 12% number, I didn't know that. And that actually is really making my blood boil, because that should be a whole lot higher, not just in Utah, but nationwide. And I can't imagine what that number would be nationwide. And everyone we know at our age across the country, it's the same struggle. I'm educated. I know I can work, and it's not, you're not saying that out of pride. You're saying out of confidence. You know what you can do. You know what you can give to people. And that's a big problem. You said offshore jobs. We don't have the America first, entrepreneurial American first, let's build America first ideas being promoted enough. If we do that long term can help this curve.
Well, back in the 50s and 60s, we were purposely and knowingly deindustrialized. I mean, that was a concerted effort to ship all industry overboard and not have anything in the United States. And Trump's made it a concerted, his point of his campaign is to reindustrialize the United States, bring all that industry back here, which is the point of the tariffs. And we get hit up in our comment section, Trump gets destroyed with tariffs, but Tariffs are out there on purpose to force the reindustrialization of the United States, to bring industry, to bring factories, to bring all that commerce back, because it was all exported. 100% was exported. And what does exporting industry do? It gets rid of the middle class. Middle class is gone. And again, that's a very, very socialistic thing, is to have no middle class. It's an upper class and a lower class. And that's it under socialism. And people who want to push socialism know how to get rid of it. And that's, you deindustrialize, and you can make the United States the same as every other country out there.
Absolutely.
And that's what they want to do, because the only way they can have their world order and everything they want is to bring the U.S. down. It's not bringing the rest of the world up. It's, let's bring the U.S. down so it's even with the rest of the world. But that's the socialist mentality, is because you're successful, you're doing it on the backs. We heard from the Democratic Socialists of America last week that says the United States is oppressing all these other third world countries. You're purposely oppressing them and demeaning them. And like, we haven't done anything. Just because we're successful, our success is not on the backs of others. We're not making South America decide to put socialist governments in there unless it was USAID doing it. We discussed that too. But we're not forcing you guys to choose and make your decisions. But they have that mindset, and it's a mindset that I don't think you can get rid of, is where if you're successful, it's because of somebody, you're demeaning somebody else. It's not because of your own efforts, your own work ethic, what you put into it. It's because you oppress somebody else.
100%. I'll leave one comment. So I had a professor in junior college back in California, and he leaned to liberal. It was a sociology class. It was a general you had to take to graduate. And what he said really opened my mind, and I think he's 100% correct. He said, what are Americans known for worldwide? And we kind of joke around. We're thinking like, oh, McDonald's. We're thinking the iPhone. Like good capitalist stuff. He said, wrong. We are consumers. That's what we're known for. Yeah. And it really made me think. I'm like, consumers. Like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to go eat McDonald's after or something like that. But I really thought about it. We are just taking in and taking in and taking in from other countries. Ironically enough, from industries we sent away.
We run, last year, I think we ran a $1.2 trillion trade deficit. We've been running trade deficits over $1 trillion for a few years. They're only ever getting worse. I think reindustrializing is the single biggest national security interest that this country needs to have. And tariffs are the best way to do it. And a lot of people want to say, well, tariffs are a tax on the consumer. They are. It doesn't matter where you tax. The costs are shared when transactions are met. You could tax the corporations. You could tax the consumers. Doesn't matter. But it disincentivizes consumption, foreign consumption. And by the way, you don't run a $1 trillion trade deficit every year and everybody just goes, that's great. It's like, if I give you a loan for like 50 years of free stuff, you're just going to keep going with it? No, how do we do that? Right? And well, we do it with our military. And it's, why do people keep calling me? Anyway, so popular today.
Yeah, that's good.
But, so we do it that, like, look at what we did in the Middle East, where when the dollar got off the gold standard, we need something that you can come and exchange the dollar for. That becomes goods in your economy, your exports. What the United States has been really good at doing, though, is finding other ways to back our dollar. And that's where you get the oil dollar. It's like, fundamentally, why was it important that we had the OPEC dollar? Well, because that way people could go and get oil for our dollars. And we see this continual weakening of the dollar and a continual weakening of industry, because you got to consider, if we're importing $1.2 trillion worth of goods, that's a $1.2 trillion market that's being lost in our country. And so, tariffs, people say the tariffs wouldn't work. They absolutely were working. We had countries dropping their tariffs for one, which was incredible. We had trillions of dollars of investments pledged. The key thing where Trump was going back and forth, like, you got to keep the tariffs on so these corporations actually invest here, because they're seeking to be profitable. And so if we tell them, hey, the only way for you to be profitable is if you build in the United States, they're going to, and that's going to rebuild the middle class and everything. And the Supreme Court ruling was a real shame, because now they're talking about refunding all of that money back to the companies. Remember, the costs are shared. And so in theory, the consumers are the ones that should be getting that back. But I will tell you, there's studies that showed that consumers only took on about 20% of the tariff cost. So it had it, in the long run, they theoretically would take on 100%. But in the short term.
Well, they only took it on at the very, very beginning because, I mean, I was an importer for years. That's what I did for a living.
Yeah.
And we would go back and obviously we have to distribute those additional tariff costs to the price of the product, which is why people say, well, the
cost per
prices are
share
going
when
up.
the transaction's made.
But that's only temporary because then while we're doing that, we're also beating up our suppliers. We're going back to our Chinese suppliers and say, okay, I'm not eating these tariffs. I can't sell it for this, like at these prices forever. You guys are going to have to come down. And we really start beating them up, or we start taking our business elsewhere. And then China's like, well, we don't want you taking your business elsewhere. We'll go ahead and drop our prices. And so eventually the tariffs go up like this and the costs go up like this, but they work themselves right back down to where those supplying nations are coming back into competition again.
I think that intuitively makes sense. I haven't read any studies that go into the long term, but it just makes sense to me that as you build factories here, like your shipping costs and your other costs, they don't exist anymore. And that money stays in your economy. Those resources stay in your economy and provide jobs that uplift your citizens. By the way, the reason it's the number one national security interest isn't just because like it would be nice to have, these businesses again. Of course it would for the middle class and everything. But you've got BRICS that has like 98% control over rare earth minerals, including germanium and gallium, which we need for key military interests like missiles, radars, that sort of stuff. And they're not willing to give it to us. And so this is the pattern of a dying empire: is you lose your industry, and now your adversaries who have been providing you for so long, all of a sudden they go, sorry, you don't get your military anymore. Actually, you can't enforce the OPEC dollar. Look what's happening in Iran right now. You can't enforce the OPEC dollar. Your dollar and your economy is going to crash. We're the new industrial power. We're the new empire, and you are nothing. That's why it's that's why it's got to be the number one national security interest. This administration understands that too. If you read their national security report in November, it basically talks about that. Everybody should read that document. But unfortunately, we've had so many hiccups with the courts that the Democrats have managed to take over. It's one of those institutions the socialists have just, captured. And so we've had so many barriers there that the administration really tried to do all the right things. And unfortunately, there's been a lot put in their way.
Well, socialists don't understand economy. They don't understand the numbers. They have no idea where industry comes from, where the numbers come from, where money comes from, how it's generated. They have no economic sense at all. And they don't understand that if Iran fulfills what they're trying to do, it not only affects everybody national security-wise when it comes to them having a nuclear bomb and all these other dangers, which is what everybody automatically thinks of. But it's what you're saying is all oil is traded on the dollar right now. Yeah. And if we let them win and oil starts getting traded to the yen... I
think we did lose the OPEC dollar, right? We lost that a few years ago.
It will destroy our economy.
The key thing there is that's like almost 30% of China's energy supply. And I think there must be some quarrels with Iran in and of itself. But I mean, China not getting that oil is really good for us. I do think there were strategic errors. I'm not a supporter of this conflict at all. I don't think it's going our way, but it's a difficult thing. But I think the moral of the story here, like anybody who's opposed to tariffs, I kind of have two statements. It's like the free market is the ideal. Competitive markets are the best we can do. And we had other countries tariffing the crap out of us for years. To be able to actually negotiate with them, it was necessary that we implemented reciprocal tariffs. And that was a genius idea. Reciprocal, make it competitive, level the playing field. But beyond that, again, the $1.2 trillion trade deficit every single year is not natural.
It's not sustainable.
That is not born of the free market. That is born of forces outside of the free market. I think the military likely has a lot to do with it. And, I could go on a whole rant about how I think we could fix it. It's never going to happen. So the best that we can do is have a competitive market and have a market that behaves as the free market would. And we can try to curb that consumption with tariffs. There are better fundamental ways to do it. I'm not aware of any, though, that will allow us to preserve American hegemony over the world. And so there's a bit of a dual thing between economics and government there, and, we could get into that. But
well, I want to go further with this same video and see what these students have to say about what their definition of socialism is, if they have one.
Yeah, honestly, that definition gets thrown around a lot. I'm not exactly sure.
How would you view what socialism is, P? Economically, what is socialism?
Economically. So, I'm going to have to think about that for a second.
I guess
just specifically just, getting rid of that wealth gap in the United States?
How would I describe this little words possible?
How would you define socialism?
I mean, it's definitely more of an open form of government, and it feels like a lot more accessible to a lot more people. And that's kind of how I see it, like being more accessible and more kind of like equal ground. Yeah.
What does that mean necessarily, though?
To be quite honest, I don't know.
So that's what it really boils down to. Is when you ask people what is socialism, they really have just no idea what that means. All they're really thinking about is socialism is this utopia, right? This, or poor gets taken care of, the rich have to give up a lot of their wealth, everybody lives in peace, and they just think of this 1970s love and peace sign, everything, because it happened back then too. That's what they were trying to promote back then, and now we see history repeating itself because no one studies it, right? Yeah. And every generation, even though several generations within my own lifetime have always come out and said, well, they weren't doing socialism right. We're going to do it right this time. And I'm like, yeah, dude, how many times that's been said over history? And you're still going to try to do it again?
I mean, that just... Oh, no, go ahead.
I still believe that a good majority of them, their professor says it's good, the late night comedian says it's good, the celebrity says it's good, so we don't need a definition. The popular crowd thinks it's a good idea, so it's got to be good.
Well, I think it plays into the fact that, I mean, this is a tool that the left has been good at forever, which is they define terms, they define the rhetoric, right? And so I think, especially like the heads of the DSA, like they know that their base doesn't know exactly what socialism is. They know that they confuse mass welfare state for like actual like socialism or communism, which Marx wanted, right? In fact, I was watching a video the other day. The official DSA platform at one point said that their stated goal is like a complete revolution of our system in communism. But obviously that doesn't sound good. And so they took that off their position. And so they're confusing people what socialism, like they're confusing the definition. So people are like, oh yeah, it's just free stuff, right? Like I just get all this free stuff.
We just get to take care of the poor and the needy, and
but the DSA,
everybody gets to live happy and ooh la la and all that kind of stuff. And it's a very, very fake picture of what socialism really is.
But they know that. They know people don't know what it is, and they're playing into that so that they get their utopian society that they want.
Well, and the they isn't necessarily here in this country. These are outside sources playing these poor, gullible people for fools.
Right. The media is one of those institutions they've captured, right? That's one that we got to work on as conservatives as well. Elon Musk helped with X on that. Yeah, I mean, we got
tremendously. Yeah. Then they confuse it with democratic socialism. I heard a very, very good comment the other day is socialism is the redistribution of wealth, all that kind of stuff. Democratic socialism is just getting people to vote for socialism.
That's actually what I definition. That's almost like in line with the evolution. Really fakers, basically. Yeah. I mean,
because that's all it is. There's no such thing as socialism. Democratic socialism is socialism.
Yeah.
And if you went back in history at all, like Charlie Kirk said, millions have died because of it.
So
and nobody studies that, and the problem is they all confuse this utopia that they have in their brains, this where we're just taking care of the poor, and then they get this image. Well, this is what socialism is to me, right? It's not what socialism really is. It's what socialism is to me, right? And it says that's what I want. I want this utopia, and then they confuse that with what real socialism is, and so. That's where you get this rhetoric is, I like this idea. I like what it sounds like. I want to have this, but it's not what it really is.
Democratic socialism is interesting because after World War II, there were various evolutions of Marxism. And one of the first ones was critical theory in the Frankfurt School. They kind of had to admit, the whole international class identity thing that Marx was saying didn't really work. And so they moved over to race and gender and sexuality. But they still had conflict theory, which was like this idea that the divide is irreconcilable and it necessarily has to come at the expense or be brought about via revolution. If I'm not mistaken, democratic socialism emerged more in the 70s, and it was kind of acknowledging two things. First of all, that the economy is really impossible to manage. There's a lot of information. Hayek called it a discovery mechanism. The economy it innovates and it does things that we can't imagine, but also it sets prices and does all of these things that just no central entity could do. And the democratic socialists understood that actually was a decent thing. But then they went, well, we can get people to vote for massive redistribution. And massive redistribution is still going to lead to societal decay because it's still theft, it's still plunder. And now you're just normalizing it at a governmental level, and people can still redistribute it to themselves. But yeah, democratic socialism is an interesting animal in that regard. I think, I don't know, I think it's important to understand like what we're actually working with. And the crazy part is like Tanner's saying, their base like has no idea about any of this. It just sounds good to them. There's a great book called Rules for Radicals. Have any of you read it? It's by Saul Alinsky. He was a progressive activist in the 70s, and he basically writes the Democrat playbook. It's not that long. Everybody should read it. But, Saul Alinsky kind of talks about this concept of the haves and the have-nots, and that the young people, in a relative sense, are basically always going to be the have-nots, which this is going into why they're targeting the universities, right? That's where the young people are at. It's really, really easy to exploit anybody who doesn't have resources and say somebody has more resources than you, and there's your threshold or there's your line and your grounds for starting a revolution. So anyways, it's really important we take these colleges back. We got to end the subsidies. We got to get groups like this going, but that's some of my ideas there.
Well, another thing too, and you just need to stop the normalization of lying to voters too. When Zoran Mondani runs in New York City for their mayoral race and promises all this free stuff, and then once he's actually elected, delivers nothing of what he promises, how do the socialists look at that man and say, yes, he's our socialist warrior, right? I've never understood that because I believe that's foolish because he made these promises to you. He lied to you and never delivered on anything. How could he ever be seen as a beacon for the left? And that's something maybe I just don't understand that because I don't believe in lying to voters or lying in general. But
It'd be interesting to talk to the locals there right now and say, so where's your free buses?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear if they're thinking, well, it's coming.
Stores?
Yeah, the grocery stores.
I think they got those.
What's that?
They got a few of those.
Well, but
that's going to be
they're not
catastrophic.
Yeah, and they're not cheaper. They were supposed to be just a few items, and it's not.
They're not cheaper? I was thinking with the subsidies, they would be, in economics, there's a thing called social cost, and then there's price. And to distinguish those, the social cost is like the total cost that society bears, including subsidies. If you're driving a car, the social cost includes like the road, the tires, the car, the fuel, all of those costs. And then there's price, which is what the consumer pays. And so what I would anticipate with his stores is that it's heavily subsidized so they can get the price down. Over time, what that's going to do is because the people competing with those stores aren't subsidized, they're going to go out of business. And as it becomes less and less efficient, the social cost increases, which basically all of this is to say that when New York City goes bankrupt again, we need to let them suffer because that's going to prove to America that this doesn't work.
Agreed. And when you I'd imagine they're not going to work anyway because you have to have an ID to go in there. We know how difficult those are to get.
Yes, it's the grocery store is safer than our elections.
You're supposed to be able to get in there.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I'll have to look into those more.
My big question there is, though, of the socialist voter, of the socialist mind, are they okay with being lied to if it's a kind lie where it's maybe said in kindness where we're going to deliver good things to you, it's going to be free, but it doesn't actually happen? Do they feel regret in their vote, or do they want to double down and it just hasn't been done?
I think they just want to double down because it's not about what you do. It's about what you say you're going to do, right? Because again, they vote off of their feelings, not off of actions. So they really don't care if it comes through or not. As long as you're saying the right thing and I'm feeling okay with what you're doing, and I'm just going to keep voting that direction. They've proven that for the last 50 years that they voted that direction, particularly with Black America too, when they figured out that they can vote themselves in a handout. Generation after generation have voted in those handouts, and now you've got a completely suppressed people. And then they vote on the white guy. I'm like, no, the only thing that suppressed you was your Democrat vote because they purposely drove you to poverty by subsidizing and giving you handouts every step of the way to where 4 generations later, you're so oppressed now underneath that rails of poverty and subsidies and handouts that it's going to be everything you guys have to pull yourselves out of that. It takes a lot of work to pull an entire group of society up and out of poverty, but they've purposely driven you down there. And that's what they want to do with the Latin vote. That's why they're bringing in the illegal voters, because they're going to drive that demographic down too. Why? Because you create a permanent voter. You're going to vote me in for now to kingdom come, and I'm going to stay in office, and I get to keep my power. But that's exactly what socialism is you vote into socialism, the leaders take control of power, and how do they keep power? Oppressing the people, doing the exact opposite of what they said they were going to do, which they said they were going to go out there and take care of the poor and feed everybody. Everybody's going to have housing and stuff like that. And in the end, they're not going to lift you up, because if you lift up, then you have no more need of them. I don't need you anymore, because guess what? I can take care of myself now. And they're out of office. So they purposely oppress you to stay in power. That is our goal. And then you get the bread lines. You get lack of industry. It's all gone. And you get the Eastern Baltic European countries. And we have a lot of those immigrants that are now all over social media, and I've seen several of them in tears on social media. What are you guys doing? I left those countries to get away from it, to get to freedom. And they say, you United States people, you guys don't understand what you're doing. You don't understand what you're voting in. I left that to come here. And they're talking in thick Eastern European accents, and no one's listening to them. Why? Because we've become so complacent with the freedoms that we have, the lifestyle we have. There's absolute ingratitude across the board of a lot of people not appreciating what we have. And so when people say, well, if you don't like what we have, move out, it should be taken very, very seriously, because only by going over and experiencing what it really is will these people learn the difference.
And that's really interesting, too. When you have two populations, when you have the Republican that votes on ideology and the Democrat that votes on emotion, how do we as Republicans combat that, maybe electorally speaking, to not only be based in ideology, but then appeal to emotion, while they will obviously try to deliver results that benefit America?
Well, I saw...
Is it doable?
I don't know if it's even doable, because it's very, very difficult. We spoke about women last week, and that's a big difference between men and women, right? Men are very, very logical. Women are very emotional, but they're emotional for a reason. But the same leftist socialist mentality knows how to cater to those emotions and twist those emotions to where women want to vote for abortion, they want to vote for socialism, they want all this type of support for the poor and the needy, because that's where the heartstrings are at, right? But it's not what they're going to get.
You know, they infiltrated by infiltrating the education system, working on destroying families. Same thing in the Black communities, where they, wanted to put everybody on welfare to destroy the family. There were, we had Burgess Owens on explaining to us that back in his day, the father was the strong figure in those Black communities, and those kids didn't get out of line. So they infiltrated that. So I think that's where we need to start, by destroying the Department of Education and going back to teaching our kids good principles.
Where parents are actually in control of the school system and not the school system?
Yeah.
How would that be?
It would be great. And yeah, we should deliver the education back to the states, because I think Utah would excel in that. We proved that prior to the establishment of the DOE. But that's another thing too, when you consider the lack of the ability for the Republican Party to not only appeal to ideology, but then appeal to emotion as well. Because at the end of the day, Reagan asks famously, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago when he's running for the presidency, right? And that's such a strong message, because it's something that a Republican was able to not only appeal to ideology, where he's delivering conservative results, but then appealing to the emotion. Are you better off now than you were under a different administration? And I think that's an approach that the party needs to adopt moving forward, or these socialists are just going to run through us because they're promising lies, right?
No one cares about the actual actions, because you can go to every blue city out there, and every blue city's got massive homelessness. They got massive graffiti and garbage problems. They got massive immigration problems, and people on welfare problems. Are the highest welfare in the country is in blue states. The biggest taxation is always in blue cities, in the blue states. The highest housing prices are in blue cities. If you look at California, you look at Chicago. The education system, the worst test scores coming out of elementary schools and high schools are in blue cities and blue states. So you go point by point, and they're all worse than red states. And yet they continue to vote in the same thing. Why? Because they vote off of emotion, not off of what's really affecting them. If it's not working now, well, we're not taking enough from the rich, right? We need to take more. Let's vote in more. And then you have what happens to New York with Governor. Do you have what's going on with Kathy Hochul? And I saw I think it was a TikTok or Instagram blurb with her like 6 or 7 years ago, and then with her now. 6 or 7 years ago, she was stating, we're going to tax the rich. There's not going to be any more billionaires in the state of New York. We're going to take that money from them. And she's just up in arms against the trillionaires and the billionaires that she's going to tax them. And then just recently, she's like, well, we need to have our millionaires and billionaires come back to the state because we don't have enough money to support our social programs. And she literally came right out and said, we don't have enough money to support the social programs that we want to put into practice. And
which like every conservative predicted this, by the way.
We lost them
We're all
all.
like, wow, if you tax the billionaires more than everybody else, they're going to go anywhere else.
And she came right out and said, when we lost them to a lot of, I know a lot of them went down to Florida, and Ron DeSantis just grinning over there.
His tax revenue is probably through the roof.
Have you seen that ad in Times Square that Florida has put out saying
Florida did put that out. That was hilarious.
How thank you, New York, for being the #1 real estate customer for the state of Florida, which is totally right. But back in California, lovely governor, our Lord Tyrant Gavin Newsom, is trying to do the exact same thing. He wants a billionaire's tax, and they're even trying to make it a millionaire's tax. That's crazy.
Everyone in California is a millionaire because the purchasing power there is so low.
Right.
Right. Which is to say everything's expensive. Right.
Yeah. And what's interesting about the billionaire's tax is, and even in New York, we're seeing it, you have a lot of hardball, very lefty people, Democrats, that even though that would be a catastrophe, and the very far left people in New York are starting to realize that because they're all going to go bankrupt.
Yeah. Well, I would not be shocked if all of a sudden the New York Stock Exchange all of a sudden came up and says, hey, we're moving to Kentucky. And all of a sudden it's the Kentucky Stock Exchange instead of the New York Stock Exchange. I think that actually absolutely be hilarious because I can foresee it coming. And if Mamdani keeps getting his way and Holcomb Street keeps getting her way and Ocasio-Cortez keeps getting her way, they're not going to have any more of that up there.
Absolutely. Well, and this is socialism in history happening in our time, and we need to take the goggles off and actually realize that it's happening where the wealth are being plumbed out. So now they're poor. The poor just stay poor. The middle class becomes poor. And it's that inner circle of evil that has all the control and all the money at the end of the day. And it hurts my heart. Why can't they see that? Why can't they?
Because they don't want to. It's about principle. It's where they're just against conservatives, period. They're against Christian values. And that's really what it boils down to. I mean, we all know what this forced servitude is, this forced charity is. I mean, it's the original plan in heaven that Lucifer brought forth. I'm going to force them to obey, right? And by gosh, I'm going to save them all. And that's the original plan. It is being played out in socialism and communism. He still wants to see my plan will work, right? And that's never worked. But he wants everybody as miserable as he is, and that's what's happening. And socialism creates that misery. Any country in history that's ever practiced it's done that. History is always going to repeat itself, and the rising generation just doesn't understand that. So let's watch this one, and then we'll get commentary from you guys again.
Including overhauling the executive branch and the Supreme Court, as well as ending mass deportations entirely. So today we'll be asking students, what do you think about these so-called reforms? Let's find out. Would you generally support Democratic Socialist candidates, or would you not?
I would generally be opposed to the majority of their ideals that I know of so far. But I'd be open-minded to hear about it.
I mean, I do lean left, so I do agree with most of their policies. So, yeah, I'd say I agree.
I would kind of like more lean to supporting it, just because like I feel like with more government control, like maybe things would like be more like steady and like better.
Well, let's pause it right there then.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think that's actually terrifying.
With more government control, things are going to be more steady.
Since when hasn't it worked?
Yeah.
How loaded of a question is that?
Well, throughout history, we know that the government loves to share and help people. So that's probably what she's thinking.
It's so funny because you can ask any of these guys, do you think our government is corrupt? And they always say yes. I've done it, right? They always say yes. But then somehow to them, the solution to that corruption is more government.
See, and that goes back to my point earlier where you're asking kids who don't know how to share to then share with everyone's wealth, with all your resources. It just doesn't
your
work.
cookie, right? Yeah.
Well, honestly, I don't even think she really, like, if she actually, like, really followed that thought, I don't think she would even agree with her own statement to say, like,
probably not.
If the government, if the more power the government has, the more steady it will be. Like, I trust the government. But if I were to ask her if she likes, like, Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid taking, like, a good chunk out of her paycheck, she wouldn't like that.
Do you trust
she wouldn't like that, and she
the
wouldn't
House
like
Representative and the Senate right now? And she'd probably say no. I'm like, okay, then you want to get more power to them?
Right.
And if not that, it's like, do you trust Joe Biden? Maybe they're like, yes. But it's like, do you trust Donald Trump?
America recently adopted a platform calling for major constitutional changes. So some of these include abolishing the U.S. Senate and replacing the presidency and Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to Congress. How do you feel about that proposal?
I feel like that's a major change. I'm not sure a lot of people are ready for it.
From how I see it, I'm probably going to say that little bit sus.
I don't think it's too great to give one group so much power. I kind of like how we have it all separated, so there is some checks and balances. But yeah, I don't think I'd like that.
That is a radical change. I don't know how I feel about that because I mean the Congress and the Senate are both very important. Like Congress is representation of the people and the Senate is representation of the states. So you kind of need them both.
One of the central ideas behind the U.S. Constitution is a separation of powers, right? That's what we know as checks. That's what we know as checks and balances, where each branch of government can check the other. So if Congress chose both the executive and the judicial branches, do you think that would strengthen or weaken those check and balances?
I think it'd weaken them, considering that they take up both branches.
Weaker? Wouldn't that make it like unequal slightly? Yeah. I also agree because like they might have different opinions and they might not like overlap with like each other.
It'd probably weaken if they're all under one group.
Another proposal supported by the DSA platform includes broad immigration amnesty and ending mass deportations in many cases. What are your thoughts on that approach to immigration policy?
Definitely not a bad thing. More immigrants means more like people in America, more money being made. At the same time, if it's illegally, then maybe deportation isn't awful, but it really depends. It depends on the situation.
Obviously, there should be like laws to make sure that people don't come here illegally, but people really don't understand it. It's really not that big of a deal.
I don't think that would be good. Like just taking away all immigrants. Like, I don't know. I don't think that would be fair.
When you ask them straight up, should we get rid of the Senate? Should we get rid of the House? Should we get rid of our checks and balances? Should we get rid of the three branches of government? All of a sudden, all these socialists that said, yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we should support that. I'm like, well, that really doesn't sound like a very good idea. That's a lot of power to one branch of government. And all of a sudden, they start really thinking about it, right? And that's what I've been saying from the beginning is most people have no idea what socialism really is. They have this mindset of what a utopia is, of what supporting the poor and the needy and all this kind of stuff. And sad part about that is they truly believe in forcing it upon everybody. They don't believe in freedom. But then you propose something like this where you're going to completely change the concept of government. And even the one guy that says, oh, I'm completely for socialism, he's like, that's a radical change. I don't think we're ready for that. So do you guys see, I mean, you guys are talking to students up there. What are you seeing? Do you see these high utopias, pie in the sky type ideas, then when you really kind of get down to the brass tacks of what socialism is, they have just no clue?
I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like a lot of people, they feel their politics more than they think their politics. There are, I mean, very well established DSA Marxist groups at the University of Utah. They've been dechartered, but they're still active. It's called Mecha de U of U. They're a Marxist revolutionary group, and some of those guys have really thought about it, and they still buy into it. It definitely depends on your audience. I think the average person, though, they just feel it. It just sounds good.
Isn't that the problem, though?
100%, right? That's a messaging thing that we need to figure out. But, I mean, if somebody's watching this podcast, they're probably not normal in the sense that they're probably more involved and engaged in politics than your average person. Your average person wants to go about their day-to-day life. They kind of trust the government, and they feel like they're not, they don't have enough to make ends work. I think J.D. Vance just said something, it might have been yesterday or today. Fox News published it, and he said, look, the best way, we're going to be a socialist country unless we can actually just make lives better. They're going to keep becoming socialist until their lives start getting better. So people are looking for an alternative. And, I mean, we can go into why, there's a struggle or the perception of a struggle. And I think government and socialist, adjacent policies are responsible for a lot of that frustration, but nobody articulates it. And certainly we as conservatives, even I'm guilty of this in this conversation, is we like to explain policy. We like to explain economics. We don't just have a really good message. Capitalism helps everyone better than any other system. That's a really good message of capitalism. But we have a tendency to go in and explain why. Nobody cares.
Well, I'd like to dive into the specifics of abolishing the Senate. I think that just stems from a lack of understanding of our constitutional government. The whole purpose of a bicameral Congress was to deviate or to reduce the power that the founding fathers were scared and even putting into the legislative branch. I mean, James Madison said the most powerful branch is the legislative branch, and I think the Book of Mormon actually talks about this all the time, is remembering where your fathers came from, remembering the traditions of your fathers and the captivity that they escaped, right? If you look at the American Revolution, the Tax Act and the Townsend Act, those all came from Parliament. That came from a legislative body, not necessarily the king. And so the things that the founders were fighting against was a way too powerful legislature, right? And the king came in later and pissed them off with the letter that made them finally go independent. But I think getting rid of the Senate, it's you're just putting more power into a legislative body and you're making it more democratic, which the founding fathers were also terrified of. That's why I hate calling the United States a democracy. We're a republic. We're a republic.
Yeah.
And James Madison said this in Federalist 48. He said, they seem to never have recollected the danger from legislative usurpations, which by assembling all power in the same hands must lead to the same tyranny as threatened by executive usurpations. And I think that they need to understand that. It just comes back to, that's why I'm way in favor of training our students in American civics and constitutional government, because they need to understand that getting rid of the Senate, terrible idea.
Well, and the Senate is a Republican institution, not a Democratic one. A perfect democracy would be 51% of the people decide they don't like you and you're dead, or they can steal whatever they want. And so what republics come in and they do is they protect individual rights, typically through constitutions. And the founders were not interested in setting up a government that was a perfect democracy. They were really concerned more than anything about how we protect individual rights. That was their number one focus. And democracy is a part of that. But it's not the only thing. And so, that's another area that I think we as conservatives need to do a better job messaging is, the socialists, if 51% of them want to rob the rest of us blind, that's democracy. And that's exactly what they want. But what I want is a republic where every single individual has equal protections for their life, liberty, and property, exactly as the founders intended.
I mean, look at Britain right now, right? They have a single house, and it votes in a lot of stuff that's hurting their society right now. I mean, they are now poorer than even Alabama and Georgia. That came out, and there was a guy out in the streets. How wealthy do you think Britain is compared to the rest of the United States per state basis? And they're like, oh, we've got to be in the middle somewhere, 25th. He's like, no, we're 51. We're dead last. We would be poorer than the poorest state. Every single state. And that's coming from a single house, right? You look at the Muslim population where they have completely taken over. They're Britain is a conquered country at this point because they've got no-go zones, and that's come from a parliament that votes that in. Because socialism is a part of appeasement, and appeasement is let's just let everybody in.
Well, you know what's frustrating about that too is like one of the virtues of democratic institutions is that they allow us to find compromise without major groups killing each other. Like that's one of the virtues is we find compromise without force. And it's weird because I would argue that a nation and a people have a right to defend themselves from external forces. And so in the case of Europe and many of these other sort of welfare states just opening their borders and being perfectly democratic like that, and they have constitutions, but, you know, how well are they followed? You know, it's like you have no responsibility to franchise immigrants, to give them a say in your institutions. You don't. And in fact, you actually have a right as a nation and a people to defend yourself and use force defensively against them. But they don't do that. They've just totally franchised them in their institutions and given it away. It's like the weirdest falling of a nation ever because they're just letting it happen. It's so strange.
Well, one of the biggest attacks we have right now, and I want you to play off of this one because you're commenting really, really well about it, is the attack on the Electoral College. Because there's so many people, particularly socialists, that want to get rid of the Electoral College, which would turn us from a republic to a democracy, which we are not. And it would be that. It would be mob rule, whatever the mob wants, they get.
Again, the Founding Fathers were incredibly concerned with the individual. And I think what the Electoral College seeks to do, and, you know, maybe there's some readings that they publish that I need to go find, because I don't know exactly what their commentary was on it, but I understand part of their intention was to preserve the representation of interests across minority states. Like when the United States became a nation, right, we started off as a confederacy, which was to say there's this loose union and every state is its own sort of nation, exactly like the EU, actually. We don't think of the EU as one nation, but their union is very similar to, it is a confederacy. And now we have federalism, which is awesome, and we could go into that. But the founders, they weren't concerned about the 51% getting their way. They wanted to make sure that the individual, that his life, liberty, and property were protected. And obviously dictatorships can't do that. No form of government has been more successful than ours at protecting those key individual rights. And the Electoral College was one of the things that did that, and the compromises that led to its emergence were kind of born of this idea that different states have very different interests and needs, and they need a sort of minimum representation instead of the 51% being able to overrule them entirely.
Well, just because the majority votes for it doesn't make it right, right? Look at slavery,
Never did.
Right? Just because the majority voted for it doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
But it took a republic to get rid of slavery because a democracy never would have.
100%. Because the key thing, the key innovation a republic provides is those individual rights.
So the very people that are against slavery, thinks the black were oppressed or something like that, are going to put back into power the very thing that would have prevented them from being free in the first place.
100%.
Because, again, slavery would have never gotten voted out if this was a democracy. It would never have happened. It never would happen.
And I think that's why America is one of the greatest countries. One of my core beliefs is that, one, I believe that we have a divinely inspired constitution that binds us to a certain set of ideals. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things that's happened in the last 1,000 years. When you look at the countries that came before us, they were barbaric in nature and they were tyrannical. And then you have this grand experiment of our forefathers, our founding fathers, that had come together and tried something that nobody else has done. And it's one of the longest lasting republics and constitutions. And America is still standing to this day is because of our beliefs and our ability to, one, see a path forward that's good and decent in nature, and then one that's like socialism, that's corruptive and dangerous in nature. And we have the ability to steer clear of that. We don't have a tyrannical king that's marching us down one direction or towards one religion, and I think we're incredibly blessed. And I think it would be a betrayal if we allowed these socialists to continue taking over the institutions such as our media, or our universities, or the courts, or any of these fundamental institutions that we rely on. I think it would be a betrayal if we continue to allow them to corrupt them and erode them.
And there was an idea I forgot to expand on, which is that idea of minimum representation. Again, if the virtue of a democracy is to resolve differences peacefully, you got to consider that in any instance where 51% are in line, there's a very large, very dangerous 49% minority. And that was another thing. The founders do talk about this in federalism and everything is we do not want large minorities being able to take over the state. Like, we want to resolve our differences in America. We sought to build institutions that resolve those peacefully. And so they kind of found those key things where peace needed, like the ideas that needed to be preserved for individuals to not take up arms, and then establish minimum representation. And so that's exactly what the Senate does. It's a body that provides a minimum representation. That's a Republican ideal, not a Democratic one.
Well, if we play this scenario through too, and you abandon the Electoral College, and then we have maybe an administration that favors mass migration, and if you think of terms, if the socialists believe, if DSA believes in blanket amnesty, mass amnesty, think about how that could completely destroy and erode the country in one cycle or less. You could have a situation that plays through where you have an administration that allows mass migration to come into our world, into our country, and then boost your numbers electorally to hit that 51% threshold. You could steer the country to a socialist direction. You could steer it any direction that you choose.
Well, and Democrats have kind of been doing that. I think it was the House Judiciary Committee, while Biden was in office, had criticized him. They said, this is an unprecedented abuse of our immigration processes, because Biden was getting as many people here legally as possible. And there's an analysis performed by the Center for Immigration Studies, and they're fairly controversial, but they suggested that Democrats have about 12 seats because of census manipulation. If you look at American urban centers, there is an exodus of citizens from those areas. Now, they're growing in population from foreign migrants. And so that's how Democrats are able to keep their power in Congress, is by manipulating the census, which doesn't count citizens, it counts persons. And they're bringing as many persons as they can possibly get in there through every legal and illegal pathway. And so far, that's given them, I think the study suggests about 12 seats, and they're on track to take about 10 more in the next census if we can't get mass deportation. And I understand mass deportation, it's a hard thing to see, but it's kind of a necessary evil, like so many, like government is a necessary evil in and of itself. And if we're going to keep this nation, that's really a policy that needs to be sought after.
It's not just the DSA, because we've got bad actors that pretend to be conservatives within our own party who are aiding this process all along the way.
100%. Absolutely. And it's like Nick Shirley went and did a bunch of investigations, and what did we find out? That billions and billions of dollars in New York and Minnesota and even in other states, Utah is guilty of providing non-citizens with social assistance, and our Senate wouldn't pick up the bill that could have changed that. But Nick Shirley kind of unveiled a lot of that, is that these people are literally buying and allocating people into certain areas. And then it's like, as you chase out all the normal people in our cities, you leave only the most radical, most progressive people who become overly enfranchised because of all the illegal people there. And it's like, no wonder we have this urban decay. No wonder our cities suck, because there's this broken feedback loop. Democrats are totally taking advantage of American citizens to keep power.
Well, and most of them are voting now, too. Even as much as they would like to say they're not on our voter rolls, millions of them on our voter rolls.
And the thing is that's a really contested argument. For all of this to be true, they don't even need to be voting. Yeah. For Democrats to be using illegal immigration to capture our institutions and disenfranchise Americans, they don't even need to be voting, which I think makes this a lot scarier.
Yeah, and then you do get them voting. It makes it even easier.
Yeah, you provide amnesty, right? And that's a huge thing that they want. You provide amnesty, give them on a
You just give them a driver's license, and you make the voter registration laws. All you need to do is provide a driver's license and a utility bill, proof of address, and all of a sudden you're voted. It happened here in the state. It's been proven in many other states. I think they had a congressional hearing as well. All you need to do is have a driver's license.
New Jersey just had like an administrative error that allowed 600 people on their rolls that were
not. There's more than 6,000.
6,000 or 6?
It was 6,000 to 7,000.
Holy cow!
New Jersey driver's license records.
Well, that's what they've found out, right? We know there's a lot more than that.
Well, another because this is a great topic, another thing that we saw just yesterday with James O'Keefe and Cam Hegby is they're actually going into polling stations dressed up as Muslim women, and they have a vouch program there where they don't even need to show ID to then be permitted to vote. So they're going in there, and there's one man who lives in a precinct, and he brings in eight of his relatives or 8 people, and you can't even identify them, you can't see them. They're dressed up in the gowns and whatnot, the jobs. And they are now allowed to vote based on one man saying, I know them, they live here. No proof, no transparency, no nothing there. And that is now a voter. I think that is one of the most destructive things, and I'm glad there's not a vouch program here in Utah because it would be catastrophic. But to have that in any state, it's like, are any of our elections even serious anymore?
No, and they don't want them serious because, again, it's all about power. It's not about fairness, right?
I'm James O'Keefe, and this is vouching for 7 other Muslims at a Minneapolis polling booth.
We're going in to this location, and I'm going to say that I'm vouching for them. The name is William Lawrence. The question about the vouching program, vouching. I can vouch for them, but they are not registered. That's okay, that's fine. Can I bring 5 more from up to 8 people? Okay, that's a good thing. We go back and we get Krishna and Ernesto and Mohammed. In Minnesota, you can show up on election day and vouch for up to 8 unregistered voters. Members of the Justice League dress up in traditional Muslim attire, including a transgender wearing a burqa, disgusting, and put this vouching law to an extreme test on primary day, August 11th.
Gonna be a baller, shot caller, 20-inch blades on the Impala.
The vouching.
You're vouching for?
I vouch for them.
Oh, great.
Is that okay?
Yes.
How does that work?
Well, if you're all in the same precinct,
Yes.
and you are already registered, which it looks like you are, then you can vouch for them as ID for them.
Oh, good. She says to me, I says they do not need ID. She says, you are the ID.
He is the ID.
See, I am the ID. And no ID needed. I just vouch for them.
Well,
It's
you're
good.
the ID.
I am the ID. It's good. How many people may I vouch for?
What is it? It's
8?
I thought it was 6.
I can vouch for 8 people? 8 people, no ID. We come right back. Thank you. Most poll workers we visited were willing to let us vouch with no questions asked, even when presented with the most absurd situation imaginable. While other poll workers did take issue with our investigation, revealing their awareness that something about this vouching system is deeply flawed or wrong. Yet for some reason, they don't want us to expose it.
Can't have her see me.
Get down.
Baller, I'm a 20-inch crawler, blaze on Impala, diamond rock waller.
In Minnesota, voters can vouch for up to 8 of their unregistered friends. At the polling place, a registered voter from the same precinct signs an oath confirming that they personally know the voter lives there. This allows someone without ID to register and vote. And employees of residential facilities may vouch for an unlimited number of facility residents to vote at the facility's address. That's right, an unlimited number. While proponents emphasize that the policy expands ballot access for recent movers and senior citizens, critics view it as a potential for fraud. For example, if a voucher were to lie on this contract and allow 8 of his ineligible friends to vote, and the results of that election are announced on the same day, what happens when the oath is further investigated and it is discovered that those vouched for votes shouldn't have been counted? The results of the election will have already been announced and enacted by that point. This document shows that the election workers simply circle a number of the vouchees. There's no other identifying information. And Scott Pressler from the organization Early Vote Action says there is no list of these vouchee voters anywhere. When he requested them from areas like Duluth, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and St. Cloud, Minnesota, Pressler says they are nameless, faceless, and recordless.
And you bring up a good point, and we can close with kind of this. Next to socialism, I think the biggest existential threat that we have to modern free society is the invasion of extremist Muslims and Sharia law. Sharia law is becoming very, very pervasive throughout Dearborn, Michigan. Obviously, everybody's heard about it. Minnesota's pervasive about it. Texas has got places where Governor Abbott's trying to literally stop Sharia courts from happening. We see what happened in Spain just a couple weeks ago. We see what happened in England, that they're completely taken over. We see Poland, we're not taking a single Muslim migrant, not one, right? And they're at the borders trying to forcibly cross the border and get into Poland. They got their military out there and razor wire and water cannons, everything like that, trying to keep them out. And this video here is just happened in Dearborn. This is what?
Peace be upon you. I saw this for you, O Abba Abdullah, and of what which is the
You gotta pay attention to some
Peace be upon you, O our Father. Scripture line to the length of the humanities. The height, our been hearing on the down to your ends. No, it's the same. And peace and lion and water and the contemporary it was we were held at that. Peace be upon you.
Abandon the oppressed.
The voice of our land ascend between to us and peace be upon you.
And I could go video after video after video after video of what's happening. But the basics of it is jihad means you convert, pay the jizya tax, or you die. Those are your options. And they've done countless numbers of questioning on the street saying, what's more important, the Constitution or the Sharia law? And it's always Sharia law. What are they always saying in each one of their mosques? Death to America. And a lot of times it's not really death to America because they know that's controversial. It's we got to bring down the U.S. government. We got to replace it with Sharia law. And they're already doing it throughout Europe. They have figured out blatantly that using guns, using terrorism is not working, hasn't worked for the last 40 years. So guess what they've figured out? Mass migration, outpopulate them through having kids, and then let's get into political positions, political powers. Let's start taking over the Senate, start taking over city governments.
It's like what the socialists did all
town
over
councils.
again.
They figured out that they can just do without the gun, and that's what they're doing. But their ideology is solid, that it's everybody must convert, pay a tax, or die. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. And we've mentioned this a couple podcasts ago that, yes, there are conservative people within the Islamic religion, but the Islamic religion itself is not conservative. It just isn't. It's
one of those things that's antithetical to the classical liberal principles that sit at the foundation of this country, right? So, I don't know. I mean, my concern with immigration just generally is there's two. The first is the provision of social assistance and welfare. A lot of people like to say that's not happening. For the federal government, you can qualify if you have a child in the household that qualifies, the whole household qualifies. And then in our wonderful state, the state government does handouts. So that's the first thing is when we're talking about immigration and how it's net negative, we can work on that by making it literally impossible for it to be net negative, which is, we got to make it so they can stop transferring money from the government to themselves. The second is enclaves, which reinforces a lot of that. If people come to this country, I'm not going to say they need to fully assimilate, but they should integrate. It's okay if you bring some of your cultural norms. It's okay if you even bring your religion, but you should be raising your children in a manner that they are proud to be an American, that you're proud that they are an American. And if you can't get behind that, so many of these people that live in enclaves can't, then you have no place being in this country. A nation best serves one people. If you have multiple tribes here, that is the formation of multiple nations. And now they're going to compete within the confines of the institutions for that power. It's not a good thing. We need a unified people. We need a shared identity. And if they're not willing to adopt that, then again, there's no point in having them. And so when you're looking at resolving that, we have cities. Cities actually will carve out certain ethnic areas so that these enclaves can exist. That's one of the first things that we got to do away with. And so you got to do away with social assistance and welfare. You got to do away with carving out enclaves. And we have to figure out how to kind of throttle the amount of people coming in this country so that they can actually integrate. Because if you just open the border, they're going to come in enclaves automatically. We can't actually integrate that many people at once.
Yeah, I mean, my remarks on this, I think, are pretty brief, but I think the Democrat Party just really needs to wake up to people that could be using them for political game or deceiving them in ways that maybe goes against their interests in the long term. It's like, if you think, like, the funniest thing to me is it's always been like the gays for Gaza. And it's like, well, if you were actually gay in Gaza, I don't know what your outcome for you would be when you actually look into this religion. But that my remarks would just be, this should be a really big wake up call for the Democrat Party for inviting individuals who might not have even their interests or American interests at the heart.
If we could have more democratic socialist students on campuses, at least be what that guy said. But I'm open to listening to you. If you could just be open-minded enough to listen to conservative values or have these debates and these talks, I think that could go a long way.
I saw a video the other day where a whole bunch of liberal Democrats, they called themselves liberal Democrats, they traveled to Egypt, and they were going to cross over to protest against Israel for Hamas. And they couldn't get out of Egypt because they showed them literally in the streets getting beat.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
They're getting beat and dragged all over the place by the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm like, whoa, sorry that happened to you. How'd that work out for you, right? You're going there to protest and support the very people that are now beating you and dragging you through the street. So,
yeah, we have a shared faith here. I think it really teaches us to be wary of wolves in sheep's clothing.
They're in Egypt. They haven't even gotten to Gaza yet. Egypt's supposedly peaceful, right? Guess not.
Yeah, that's nuts, man.
Ben, what's your last words there on this topic?
Well, I think I pulled up an analogy here. It's like a compare and contrast between Sharia law versus Christianity. And now, I personally know a couple of Muslims myself, and the ones I do know are great people, and I know that they're here. They want to enjoy the benefits of America. They want to take care of themselves. They want to take care of their families. They want to give back to society. So there's that balance we're trying to find of how can we take in the good immigrants that want to be here, that want to give back and do right, and then we obviously don't want the ones
doing it legally.
yeah, exactly, doing it legally, and then we don't want the ones that are just going to cause problems. Right? They're here to just mess up the system, or they have that criminal background that we were going to talk about criminals for a little bit. So Christians believe that Jesus fulfilled Old Testament Mosaic law, right? And I just but with Sharia law, there's some religious differences there because they go into how Jesus Christ was just a prophet, and that the Prophet Muhammad doesn't replace the role of this savior, but he's sort of the one that everyone listens to, from what I see. And I'm not trying to be like antagonizing on anything, but what's interesting about Christianity and American culture, everyone says, oh, like Christians in America, they're so mean, they're not Christian like at all. Like, well, Riley brought up a great point. If you're LGBT, if you're a woman, and you live in the Middle East, they literally kill you. They beat you. Women have to wear, is it the hijab that we call it? Yeah. I find that so, in a way, that's so evil. Why should they have to do that?
Because it's their fault. They're the evil ones who entice men to rape them.
Exactly. And with Sharia law, it's hard because unfortunately it's going to grow. It's going to get more popular. In New York City, it's Zoran Mandami. In his vision, he wants Sharia law in New York City. And I can't imagine that.
Sharia socialist? I mean, that's
it's going to be bad. Yeah. It's just a shame. I saw it was a silly AI picture, but it's a hijab over the Statue of Liberty, over Lady Liberty. Yeah, sorry, pal. That's not happening. I'm not going to let that happen.
Well, I think it is actually it is a reality that it could happen if some of these things don't go unchecked. We know for us that the Constitution will hang by a thread in the end of times, and we know that it will get worse before it can get good. Yeah. So I think it is kind of a wake-up call to see for us, or it's call to action, is this what we want for the future of America, or do we want to go maybe a more traditional avenue where we actually respect the constitutional republic, which we are? So I think it's an interesting thing to ask yourself at the end of the day.
Well, like I was saying, you have a lot of really good people that are Muslim, because I know a lot of Muslims too, and they're good people. But like I said, there's a lot of them that don't practice the full extent of their religion. They themselves are conservative. It's not that the religion is conservative. It's they themselves are conservative. They themselves are seeing some Western values that they appreciate, and they see the values of family. They see the values of freedom. But if you practiced the Quran explicitly, it's convert, pay a tax, or die. And that's the fault of it. And sadly enough, we're seeing that throughout Europe right now, and they've got some serious problems over there. We saw in Paris where a whole slew of them are in there burning churches, trying to torch them. They had burned a large cathedral. It all happened at the same time. It was kind of a coordinated effort where they came across that Spain border. They were burning churches in France, and then they were trying to cross the Polish border, kind of all at the same time. So that was a concerted effort right there. But that's what we're facing if we do not get a handle on this, and if the word doesn't get out, and if people don't understand what the true threats are. And that's the problem with history, right? Is, again, we're going to say that if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. And with the rising generation, I see a lot where, again, they vote by feelings, they vote by emotion, and they're not seeing the true evils of Sharia law. They're not seeing the true evils of socialism. All they're seeing is, can't we all just get along, right? And they have this crazy utopia picture in their mind, and they think that's socialism, or that's the utopia they have, and what we have right now is definitely not it, so it can't be capitalism. And they're just not thinking that through, and the education is not there, the study of history is not there. And then because of that socialistic mentality where we just want to bring everybody in, everybody should participate, everybody should have free health care, everybody this and everybody that, and part of everybody is Sharia law. And then that's where they just accept that in with full open arms, not knowing it's the wolf coming in, and that's going to be the downfall of this country. A lot of people religious-wise, a lot of people try to paint other Christian religions as the Antichrist, right? Like the Catholic Church, the Antichrist, or the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're the Antichrist, or a lot of times the Mormons are the Antichrist, right? When you believe in Christ, it doesn't matter how you believe in Christ, you can't be an Antichrist if you believe in him, right? But the Muslim religion is verbatim the Antichrist, because they want Christianity gone, they want Judaism gone, they want it all gone. It's that is the existential Antichrist in this world is facing right now. People don't see it as that.
Yeah, I want to make a quick point. I know I talked about how Mosaic law was fulfilled in the Old Testament with Jesus Christ. One point here is with Sharia law, and this is very, in a way, almost like socialism, with how they believe that social values, religious values, and then government values are supposed to be all this one big entity. But in essence, we don't believe that. We believe in a separation from church, separation from state, how we worship in our homes, how we worship on Sundays even in the church. Like, it should all be our own self. It's the exercise of free agency. But Sharia law, it's all supposed to be one thing. It's one way, and if not, then you're cut off, you're cast out, and unfortunately they punish you in horrendous ways. And that's I think where if that Sharia law does occur, it's if we don't want to agree with that, then we're going to be punished. We're going to be taken over, and that in itself is an immoral catastrophe.
Well, I think to jump on that, I think there's two things that make me upset: is people that push harm on others, and then the other thing that makes me really upset, which I find very common, especially in certain and younger demographics, which the Utah College Republicans is trying to change, is people not doing anything about it. If you read On Duties by Cicero, he says there's two injustices, which is one, to inflict harm on another, and two, to do nothing when you could prevent the harm on another person. And he says that that's just as bad as abandoning a parent, a child, and your country. I think the problem is like, and I even see this down in southern Utah, which is predominantly one of the most conservative parts of Utah, is is they take our freedoms and our privileges for granted, right? And then they don't do any. I mean, I see this
apathy is bad,
right? I see this among my own crowd, and we especially saw this during the primaries. Among the Republican primaries, it was a 34% turnout. Among that, of that 34%, 80% was 40 years and above, which means, and I think 18 to like 25 or 26 was 6.6%.
Young people don't care.
Yeah.
Because they're so blessed.
And that's the problem.
What this nation has given them.
Exactly.
That they don't care.
Exactly. And I think that's the problem is that, and that's what the Utah Republicans are trying to change, is getting people involved, because these are real threats to our country. These are real threats to our way of life. And we need to actually stand up and make sure it doesn't happen. So,
Riley, what percentage of the state convention were people that we were able to get to go there?
Yeah, so that was something that we've been really trying to work towards and change, and it's a great question, because we had over 5% of this last Utah Republican Party's state convention be of our demographic, being the Utah College Republicans, which I thought was an amazing thing. It's something that has never been done before. It was by far the youngest state convention ever, and we're trying to bring down that age bracket ever so slightly. And I think over the next few years, we're really going to be able to have an impact in getting the youth more involved. But at the end of the day, this is our country to inherit, right? The test of time is there. Nobody will outlive those of our past. So it's one of those things where it's like, if we aren't to take a stand now, nobody is really going to come for us. And those who will be are those who might not have our founders' vision at heart.
Well, they always say that when good people do nothing, bad things happen, right? Yep. And apathy is a major problem. I mean, that's a good note to end on there is, and I've seen it throughout Prop 4, and I see it throughout a lot of things that I just don't get involved, right? I'm not political. I don't get involved, right? And that's going to be the death of America, is when you have that type of apathy. That's where you're taking advantage of it. You're complacent, don't care about anything else. I just want to live and let live, and you think nothing's going to change, everything's going to be fine. Nobody's that extreme. They're not going to take it to that level. It's not really happening. Yeah, they're talking about socialism, but is it really ever going to become socialist? Oh, yeah, Sharia law. Yeah, those guys are just wind on the TV screen. It's never really going to happen, and people just kind of complacently just kind of explain all that away, and in the end just sit back and go about their lives and do nothing about it. Yep. So I'm glad to see that you guys are doing a lot towards the youth and helping them bring them into the fight, because like you said, that's the one generation that's currently not in the fight completely, and they got to get in the fight. So we'll let you guys have kind of your last comments, and we'll wrap it up. So go ahead, Carson. What's
Well, first of all, thanks for having us on. And with this country and our state, which is a very special state, we're confronted with a lot of change, and change is not rooted in what any of this was intended to be. And so I think as we sit here and we look for solutions and ways to get through this, we just got to look back at what the founders had intended and what they actually built. And we have to ask ourselves why it was successful. We have to figure out how to reinvigorate that and turn it into, something that people know about enough to fight for. And I know that's something that we're going to keep trying to do with the college Republicans.
Yeah, I think if anybody listening, if they can support the Utah College Republicans, they absolutely need to, right? Like this is who's going to inherit, the Republican Party is Gen Z, right? And as far from what I can tell, especially within the Utah College Republicans party is Gen Z wants to get involved. They really do. Like if they have opportunities to get involved, they absolutely can. And I think if anybody can support our program and making sure that Gen Z understands that they do have a platform, that young conservative voters do have a platform, and they need to get involved, and we need the support to make sure they can get involved. So
yeah, I just want to reiterate that we're very grateful for you guys giving us this platform and having us on. And to Tanner's point, if you're not involved and you're young watching this incredible show, go and join a chapter. Go to our website. It's ufcr.gop, and then you can go to our About section and find which school you're at or wherever you're located closest, and join a chapter and get involved and learn who your public officials are and learn how you can get involved and make a change. And then if you're not of that college age but still want to support us, we always You have the ability to financially support us, which allows us to further spread and share our mission. And for those who maybe joined late, my name is Riley Beasley. I'm the chairman of the Utah Federation of College Republicans, and like I said, I'm just grateful for you guys also being in the fight to spread Republican values and one for caring for this country. I believe America is worth fighting for, and we are the greatest country, and we need to keep that going. And Carson said earlier that we're the global hegemon. They could very well be lost sometimes in our lifetime, and I really hope that it isn't, and it will be, though, if we don't empower the youth. So it's really on us, and it's on you guys, too, to prepare us and then also provide us the resources necessary to save America.
Well said. Well said. Well, I think as we can tell, we got a really good group of people here, and thank you guys for having us on. The most important thing we can do, our generation, is get out the door. We have to fight and fight and fight for our country. We have to fight for our Constitution. We have to fight for the little things in our world that are good. Especially we have to fight for our God. If we don't do those things, we will fall. And the key is not getting complacent. I love how you talked about how Southern Utah might have a little bit of complacency problem, and that's a problem with our generation. We think, oh, well, politics is for the old people. Well, eventually that who has to inherit it? We do. But this isn't nothing that previous generations of the past that has occurred onto us. None of it should be scary. We should look at it with a smile. We should say, this is an opportunity for us to shine. This is an opportunity for us to change and do good for God and country.
God bless you all for your efforts. And I encourage young adults out there to remember that you have to stand for something or you'll fall for everything.
It's been such a true statement, because you will fall for everything. That's just what's going to happen. If you don't understand the truth, if you don't understand reality, if you don't understand economics, if you don't understand tariffs, if you don't understand why those are good, and you believe the rhetoric that's out there, oh, he's just taxing us, he's destroying the economy, or if you don't understand why we are trying to get rid of illegal immigration, why we're trying to have mass deportations, and all you believe is a rhetoric that we're, again, being mean and nasty, and we're destroying families and separating kids and putting kids in cages and all this other kind of stuff, or if you believe that we're suppressing the poor and we're suppressing the underprivileged and we're suppressing the minorities, and that's all you believe is just that rhetoric, you're going to buy into it every single time, because the rhetoric is strong, it's pervasive, it's on repeat 24/7, and they make it sound really good. Why? Because they know how to pull at the heartstrings. They know how to make it sound good. They know how to make the rest of us sound bad, and it's just the opposite. It's just the opposite. So hopefully this helps. This conversation helps a lot of people. Hopefully the information gets out. Hopefully a lot of people join the Young Republicans in all your universities out there, because true information, true light knowledge has got to get out there. So again, like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you're paying attention to our social media platforms, helping us get the message out. We'll link these guys in our descriptions and everything, so you guys can join their organizations or help support their organization. And we'll see everybody on the next video.